Welcome to our podcast, a collection of interesting stories. Hi, welcome to our podcast, Parkinsons, DBS, The Journey, Part 2. This is Part 2 in the podcast about Parkinson's. This is more related to the DBS journey, the actual event, what occurs, what makes it difficult, what you should think about. Some will find it interesting, but a majority of listeners, I would expect, to be families of people who have been through DBS or families and recipients of upcoming DBS. Deep brain stimulation involves implanting electrodes within the areas of the brain. Electrodes produce electrical impulses that affect brain activity. It is invasive and scary, but over a 90% success rate. So why would you consider it? To improve the symptoms of a degenerating Parkinson diagnosis, ease some symptoms, improve quality of life. I'm not sure how long for, but that's why I did it. And you must be doing it for yourself, your family and your friends. And some of the things I had to do as part of my process were to clear my head so that I could go into the surgery not worrying about things that I had left undone. So I got my wife present as well. She's going to intervene in some of this. 6 months before, we did a power of attorney.
We did. And it's very confronting to have to do that at quite a young age, but it's part of the process that the hospital requests, because if in that very small margin something goes wrong, there needs to be someone making strong decisions that you as the patient have spoken to your partner about. And so you get the outcomes you want if you are unable to speak.
And you can't do it afterwards because you're deemed to be a blithering mess.
You are deemed to be incompetent.
Incompetent, and you can't do it afterwards. So you have to do it before, and you have to use a lawyer to sort it out.
We did medical and financial, but we've also done ones, legal paperwork that hospitals request as well, which is just one more layer on top of the medical permission, medical power of attorney.
So I have to be nice to you?
Indeed.
Okay. So search for a good surgeon. This is a good tip here because I assumed that I could pick my surgeon, but I can't. My surgeon is aligned with my neurologist. My neurological surgeon is aligned with my neurologist. So before you find a neurologist, you need to think about who their surgeon partner is. So I used...
Doesn't matter.
So you need to think about that beforehand. Get a good neurologist, private versus public. I have talked to a few people on Facebook and had phone calls with them, and the public approach is different to the private approach in that we had meetings weekly after the surgery, and the people that I talked to that did public didn't. Now, I don't know if it was them not following up or not, but it's really important.
I think what's really important when you're choosing a doctor or a surgeon is that you feel that they are advocating for your best interests and that you trust them. It's a very big procedure, and you don't want to be anything except fully comfortable with who is around you.
And you sort of pick the surgeon, but you never meet the surgeon until you're bald and laying on a tray.
Yes, that was surprising for me.
Yeah.
But then again, surgeons aren't known for great bedside manner, so meeting them on their game day is probably the best time to meet them.
He was excellent. But I didn't meet him until I was being rolled into the surgery. Prepare your family. Now, it is a difficult surgery. It is invasive. It's in the brain. That means you don't feel it, but it also means it can do an awful lot of damage very quickly. So we had to prepare the family, didn't we?
Yes. And it's like any prepared surgery. It's a weird concept to try to prepare for. It's not anything you're ever taught. It's like, oh, your husband's going to have 2 holes put in his brain today and, a battery put into his chest. It's a bizarre premise to have to prepare for. But it's important, I think, when you've got children to have conversations about how they're feeling leading up to the surgery. Our daughters cleared their schedules for that day because they felt, one, they wanted to support me, but also they probably couldn't have done their jobs anyway.
And we have 2 different daughters. One put her head in the sand and one had too much detail and knew what could go wrong, so she was a teapot.
I think there were 3 teapots that day.
You were a teapot too?
Oh, yes, of course we were.
Okay, you're very positive in front of me. What's interesting is I'm very positive about technology and about surgeons and educated people, so I wasn't all that concerned about the surgery, but I talked to someone today who was very nervous about the surgery they're having next month. And plan for recuperation. You need to plan that you're not going to go back to work, you're not going to start doing emails. You really need to rest and let the nodes settle and the power they turn on settle, because you'll have feelings that you've never had before. A month before, we sorted out the costs. I was 11K out of pocket. I saw the neurologist weekly for the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
Going into the surgery. And we had to do the hospital paperwork, which I've got Parkinson's and therefore I'm not allowed to write by law. So Lisa did all the paperwork. Was there much of that?
There was considerable paperwork to fill out, but it was all accepted and done, and the hospital that we went to was very good about keeping us in the loop and making sure we had done everything before it needed to be done.
And when I walked in, because Lisa dropped me at the front door because it was busy outside, I just said my name and they told me what room number I was in. Having said that, the hospital room was a shithole.
It served its purpose.
Was a shithole. I didn't meet the surgeon. I had blood tests and scans. I went in on a Monday.
Tuesday?
I went on Tuesday. And the rest of that day I did nothing. They just wanted me in there to monitor me and take my bloods. And early the next morning I went into surgery. So about 6 or 7 a.m.
We've diverted a little bit here in that this isn't a month before. You're speaking of the day of.
I am. Yeah.
In the days before the hospital admission, we basically went into our own little lockdown. It was encouraged, and we, as a couple, were washing our bodies as well as our towels and clothing in sanitizer. So
Yellow.
Ken was completely germ-free to the best of our efforts to keep his skin safe for the incisions.
And I was lighter because there was so many germs removed from my body. So start isolating to avoid sickness. You don't want to go into an expensive surgery like this and say, I've got a cough on the day and I've got to do it again. We missed a best friend's 60th, which was on the Saturday night, and I was going on Tuesday morning, so we couldn't go to that. And some of the things I did 3 days before, I wrote a letter to my family. I did practical things like wrote down all the passwords, you don't need to do this, but I felt comfortable in doing it, or more comfortable that I did it. It cleared my head, and for me that was important.
Indeed.
I then shaved my head, turned up to hospital, and they told me I didn't have to shave my head. So that was a bit of a... I just assumed you'd have to shave your head. We prepared the house for my return. Couch, TV, bed. If you're single, I don't think you could do it by yourself. Have a dog minder, have acceptable visitors. Prepare for the worst. I mean, I wasn't really all that bad. I was just weird. So when they turn the nodes on, which they do, they put the nodes in your brain during the surgery. They don't turn them on until after the surgery, but they can turn the knobs down far enough that I could stop thinking and I could stop speaking. So in the months following, I had to change the settings regularly to find the right settings for me. And that caused some problems, and I'm ahead of myself already. The day of entering hospital, the forms were done. There was a medical audit.
This was basically an audit of all of the medication you were taking.
Oh, that's right. They took it off me. I wouldn't give it to me.
It was quite laborious to do because there is a lot of medication in your world. And it was, funnily enough, locked up. So obviously it's a policy within hospitals that patients, even though they walk in fully medicating by themselves, it's... I don't think you took medicine once you entered hospital.
No. And I started shaking and all the sort of things that were predictable, but the hard one was sleeping. I take some tablets to help me sleep. They wouldn't give those to me, which I thought was a bit stupid.
No, I think no one sleeps well the night before they have surgery, planned surgery. I think it's reasonable.
Well, I woke up early and had a shower, got ready.
Yeah, you texted me you were going in.
Yep. I went in the afternoon before I had the surgery this morning. I kept calm. I watched TV. Wife's job was the family, so I didn't worry about any of that sort of stuff. I just worried about my stuff. Nothing by mouth. I didn't have breakfast. It was early for breakfast anyway, and I usually have breakfast to go with my pills. Because I wasn't taking my pills, I didn't really need to have breakfast.
You need to fast before an anaesthetic anyway.
Do you?
Yes.
How many have I had? They took me into the surgery about 7 a.m. No pre-med. This is interesting. There was no drugs in my body for the first 3 of the 5 hours I was in there. It took me into 7 a.m. It was a big room. There was 6 staff. There was an MRI machine, which is... which hospital was it?
St. Vincent's.
St. Vincent's has an MRI in the surgery, which is a good idea because they are constantly flipping you around and sticking you in the MRI to make sure they're in the right location. There were representatives of the technology that's in my brain. I didn't know that till afterwards because you can't see behind your head. One nurse said, "Do you want me to hold your hand?" And I said, no. You know, I'm a man, I'm tough. By the end, I was stroking her hand and proposing marriage. I did ask... I just assumed the holes in my head would be small. And when I found out they weren't going to be small, so I assumed it'd be like 1 millimetre. But they're about 1 centimetre. When I found out they were 1 centimetre, I said, if you're going to use a circular saw, can I have the bits of the skull that are left? And I'll get them turned into earrings for my wife. I'll get them all polished up. And no, nobody laughed at that. The first part of the surgery was the hardest. They attach a frame to your head. They drill it into your skull in 4 places. They inject those 4 places to make it less painful, and they were very good. If I pointed to whichever one was hurting, they injected it straight away. This was all while I was awake for 2 or 3 hours. Constant measuring and remeasuring, computer modelling, MRIs, machines that go bing, everything. Couldn't keep up with it all, didn't try. Frame was most painful. Drilling was loud. 2 minutes per side, they said, and that was probably a little bit less than that. Although it's hard to focus on that sort of stuff because I was stroking the nurse and proposing marriage. Didn't feel the nodes going in because once they drilled a hole in your skull, everything below that has no feeling. So when I asked when they were putting it in, they said we're halfway in already. And when they touched the spot, which is the size of a piece of rice standing on its end, when they touched the spot, all the shaking stopped in my body. That was the right node. The left node didn't do much, and I don't think has done much since. But the right node, I got a lot of benefit from, and that was before they turned the power on. This is just touching and having a low level voltage through it. As soon as I got there, I stopped shaking. Then they put me under general and they put the wire in my chest, up through my neck, through the skull, up to the nodes in my brain. I call them my horns now because they do protrude about 0.5 centimetre. And I used to have very, very short hair. You would have seen my horns. So I cut that out. Anything you want to add to that?
No. It was very symmetrical.
The whole surgery about 5 hours. I woke about 4 p.m. The family visited. I was a bit out of it for a while. I can't remember. I slept right through the night, so I was pretty pleased with that. And from that day forward, I felt fine. I don't know how much was energy surging through my system from being positive about the whole thing. But I was monitored regularly, bloods, heart rate, the machine that goes bing, everything I've ever had in the past. I was very constipated, which is not common discussion. They gave me some extra products once I got home to get things moving. Constipation is hard with PD anyway, but after surgery, it's much, much harder. And I thought I was going to blow an O-ring trying to go to the toilet. This is where you say that's enough information.
Yes, you're oversharing.
I spent another 5 days doing nothing. I think I was let go a day early, but I think what they're doing is checking for strokes. So they're constantly taking your blood pressure, constantly taking bloods, constantly checking in on you and looking in your eyes, and after a while you start feeling these sort of things. They did warn me beforehand that the surgery fucks with your inhibitions. So you can come out of the surgery and gamble or eat, not in the surgery in the hospital, but afterwards you can have a propensity to bet or a propensity to eat, a propensity to have a push for sex,
Drinking.
They did warn me that I might be nude and running through the building, and I said, can you please take a photo of me before you stop me, because that'd be a great photo to have on the wall. They're looking for signs of that inhibitions all the time. I didn't have any of that in retrospect, did I?
No.
Nurses were excellent. I wish I'd remembered their names. I would have bought them flowers. They were wonderful. There was probably the nurse in the surgery was fantastic. And there's probably about 3 or 4 other nurses I would have very much liked to have thanked. But I was in my own little world. The hospital food was shite. Now I'm told that other hospitals don't have shite food, but we are where we are. so I used to get the family to bring in food for me. The neuro visited, the surgeon visited, the technologist visited, who's the representative of
Boston Scientific.
Anesthesiologist, everyone turned up in my unit.
You had physio.
In-house
physio.
I had in-house physio, but I went straight away walking around the floor because I could, and my legs went straight, and it wasn't uncomfortable, and I didn't have a difficult gait. A number of times the nurses took me back to my room, but I was a flight risk, and I lived up to that. I hope that's been helpful. Then they turned on my unit, which must have been the next day. I felt good straight away because they had a low level of power going through it into that node already. So you sort of get 75% of that benefit before they turn the power on. Nobody else laughed except me. But, I felt good. It's hard to explain what happens to you when they ramp the settings up too high, too low. But my wife knows when I'm sliding off the seat in the neurologist's office that I'm not there.
I would say that, like Parkinson's, though, every journey through this surgery will be different for each individual, because you all have different symptoms that you want managed.
Couldn't work it out.
And hopefully the outcomes
went back on most medications
above
after that.
and beyond your wildest dreams.
I do occasionally get dizzy. I was dizzy yesterday for the first half of the day. I went back to bed. But overall, it was a very positive experience and a positive outcome. After I got home, I was exhausted, full of enthusiasm.
He was a very good patient, but a very impatient one. He needed to rest because he had open wounds and the like, but he was very impatient to get on with his life, which is probably a personality trait as opposed to the success of the surgery. Bullet at gate is what I feel. So it was a matter of keeping everything calm and everything in a schedule to manage the recovery, because everyone's enthusiastic to get going again, but you need to rest. And while I think our opinions of this differ, there was a recovery period that month allowed for in our diary.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I was still constipated, badly constipated for probably 2 weeks. I saw the surgeon 3 times. I saw the neuro weekly, then fortnightly, then monthly, then quarterly. At those meetings, he plays with the settings of the nodes. There's like a Nokia phone-like controller. He can change the programs, but you can change the power settings. A couple of times he changed the settings and I got quite sick, got quite dizzy, got quite agitated.
I think we need to acknowledge, though, that the doctor was advocating on your behalf and changing them, but what he didn't realise was the after effect of changing. He was going for quite, I think, big improvements, and sometimes there was no improvement. Matter of fact, symptoms would go backwards. But I think it's important to know he was working in our best, for our best outcomes.
He was working for us, I have no doubt of that.
But there are other neuros that will do it a different way. They'll do everything very, very slowly and incrementally, as opposed to making a big step with the programming. And
the big step led to me having a few fits and ended up moving from the coast back into Melbourne because I thought I needed to be closer to hospital. The nodes of power, I documented everything. So there's like 30 symptoms of Parkinson's, and every time he would say change the setting right, 1.2 volts to 2.7 volts, left the same, and I would change them all and then note all the reactions. I allowed 3 days after every change, but I only allowed 1 day if I felt sick. I went backwards. So I documented the programs, the power levels, my reactions, and that was good. But what I did find afterwards was the longer you're on the settings, the better you react. So you seem to absorb the setting you're in, and your brain makes that normal. I'll explain that again because I think I've probably confused you as I've confused myself. If you got an 80% improvement by changing the settings, that's wonderful, but it would settle on 90-95% improvement because something happens in your brain after about 3 months. So I made changes monthly, weekly, daily, going through the process. Then at the end, because my eyes didn't work, which is called blepharospasm, which is part of Parkinson's or not part of Parkinson's, depending on who you talk to. My doctor was hell-bent on fixing my eyes, and it didn't make my life well, making these big sweeping statements, changes to the system. So once I got 6 months after the last change, I was very happy, very settled. I could walk straight. My long face was gone. My constipation was still there.
Your bladder issues
Bladder
corrected.
issues disappeared, which was wonderful. I'm only 10 years in, depending on how you measure Parkinson's. But I'm very positive now. We've moved into an apartment with no stairs, just in case. Wide doors, just in case. I feel like we've now positioned ourselves for the future. I've changed neurologists to get someone focused on, because I have a lot of foot pain and I don't sleep very well, and he didn't seem to focus on those things. He was still focusing on trying to fix my eyes, whereas I thought the DBS was at the right levels. So now we're focused on changing sleep patterns, the pains in my leg, which I don't know if you guys have it, but my toes would curl under on my right foot, and that would strain the tendons on the top of the foot, and I felt like I had nails through my foot.
I think we need to acknowledge that the surgery in no way stops every single symptom. And the fact that we've moved on to another neurologist is because these symptoms we want managed. We want pain relief if it's possible. And these are things that people with Parkinson's or people supporting people with Parkinson's, they're shocked by the fact that there is pain, there is random things like toes curling, which can affect your balance. You know, there's a whole range of things, and if you've got a neuro that's willing to hear these symptoms and then clear think about how they could best improve, or maybe say, I can't improve this, but we can work on something else. I think it's very important that most people don't understand the gravity or the number of symptoms that can be managed through the Parkinson's journey.
See, it's interesting. I had 3 neurologists. I'm on the 3rd now. The first one was so focused on my eyes, Botoxing around my eyes. He missed that I got Parkinson's in the rest of my body. And even when I tried to talk to him about it, he just said, lay down, I want to Botox your eyes. So we left him. And the next guy, I walked in the door and he said, you've got Parkinson's. In fact, I was diagnosed in the reception by other people who said, how long have you had Parkinson's? And I said, I don't know, I do. And they said, yes, you do. The second guy was brilliant, got the DBS in, got my quality of life back, but didn't worry about all the ancillary little issues which make your life difficult. So now we're at a younger neurologist. I tried to get someone who'd be old enough, live through my life, so I wouldn't have to change again. And she listens to my wife, the first one who'd listened to my wife, which has been good. My wife is the best interpreter of my needs because I get a bit confused sometimes. So she's the one there telling me what's time to sit down, time to rest. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful. It's probably more helpful for people and families going through DBS or shortly going through DBS. I wasn't scared, and I think that was fairly unusual because I was cracking jokes all the way through the surgery. Nobody else laughed except me, but I felt good cracking the jokes. There's a picture on my website of me in the frame in the middle of having my head drilled, if you want to have a look at the website. But I think that's about all, Liz. Anything else from you?
No, I think we've covered enough. I would say that, like Parkinson's, though, every journey through this surgery will be different for each individual because you all have different symptoms that you want managed. And hopefully the outcomes are above and beyond your wildest dreams.
Good luck.